Snow drifted past the tall cafe windows in slow, deliberate spirals, softening the sharp edges of the city outside. Inside, everything glowed: warm chandeliers, polished wood, muted laughter, but none of it touched him. He sat alone at the small round table near the window, spine straight, shoulders tense, as if posture alone could hold his life together. The coffee in front of him had gone untouched, a thin skin forming on the surface, steam long gone. He didn't notice. His eyes stayed fixed on the glass, watching snow erase footprints as quickly as they were made. Around him, Christmas existed for other people. Couples leaned close, voices low and intimate. Families shared desserts, forks clinking softly, smiles easy and unearned. Somewhere, a child laughed. The sound passed through him like wind through an empty room. He had everything people dreamed of: money, influence, control. But tonight it felt like a costume he wore too well. The silence inside his chest pressed harder than the noise around him. He checked his phone, reflex more than need. No messages that mattered. No one waiting. No urgency except the dull ache of another year ending without meaning. He set the phone down carefully, as if it were fragile, and wrapped his hands around the cup for warmth he didn't feel. Outside, the snow kept falling, relentless and quiet, and for the first time in a long while, he wondered when exactly he had started sitting alone in rooms full of people, watching life happen through glass instead of living it. She lingered near his table longer than she meant to, the warmth of the cafe clashing painfully with the cold still clinging to her skin. Melted snow darkened the hem of her thin coat, and her shoes left faint wet marks on the polished floor she immediately regretted. She almost turned away. Pride urged her to disappear before anyone noticed. Hunger argued back, sharp and unforgiving. Her eyes flicked to the empty chair across from him, its leather spotless, untouched, waiting. He didn't look up at first. From where she stood, he looked unreachable, tailored suit, quiet authority, the kind of man people didn't interrupt. She swallowed, fingers curling into the strap of her worn bag as if it were the only thing holding her upright. The cafe felt suddenly too loud. Every laugh aimed at her, every glance a judgment she hadn't earned but expected anyway. Her heart thudded hard enough that she was sure he could hear it. "Excuse me," she said, the words coming out softer than planned. He lifted his head then, and their eyes met. His were tired, distant but sharp. The moment stretched, heavy and dangerous, like standing on the edge of a decision you can't take back. Her courage wavered, then steadied, fueled by desperation more than bravery. "Is this seat only for the rich?" she asked. The question hung between them, bare and exposed. She hated how honest it sounded. Hated that her voice betrayed everything she tried to hide: fear, hunger, hope. Her cheeks burned. Part of her braced for the familiar outcome. A polite excuse? A look of irritation? Security called. Humiliation neatly wrapped in silence. She stood ready to apologize, to retreat, to disappear back into the cold if she had to. But she didn't move. She held his gaze, fragile but unbroken, waiting for his answer like it might decide more than just where she sat. For a heartbeat, he said nothing. The cafe noise dulled, as if the world had pulled back to watch his response. He felt the familiar reflex rise in him, the instinct to protect his space. His quiet, the invisible wall money had built around his life. He had earned this table, this calm, this distance. That voice was old, trained, efficient. It had served him well. Then he really looked at her. Not the coat, not the shoes, not the question, but her hands. They were clenched tight, knuckles pale, as if she were holding herself together by force. Her shoulders were drawn in, defensive, ready for rejection. He recognized that posture with a jolt of discomfort. He'd worn it himself once, years ago, before success taught him how to hide it better. The silence stretched. Nearby conversation slowed. Someone cleared their throat. He felt eyes on him, the unspoken expectation that men like him didn't make space. They owned it. His jaw tightened. Something inside him resisted, not her, but the version of himself that had learned to say no too easily. "No," he finally said. Her breath caught, and for a split second he saw defeat flash across her face. He stood before the moment could collapse. The chair scraped softly against the floor as he pulled it back, the sound sharp in the quiet that followed. "No," he repeated, gentler now. "It's just a seat." Relief hit her so visibly it startled him. Her shoulders sagged, tension pouring out as if she'd been holding her breath for days. She hesitated, still unsure, still waiting for the catch. He gestured again, open, unmistakable. An invitation, not charity. As she sat, careful and tentative, he felt something shift, subtle but undeniable. The empty space across from him was gone, replaced by a presence that made the table feel suddenly smaller, warmer, real. Around them, the cafe breathed again. Conversations resuming. But he stayed still, heart oddly unsteady, knowing he had just crossed a line he hadn't even realized he'd been standing behind. She didn't fully relax even after sitting. Her back stayed straight, hands folded tightly in her lap, as if the chair might vanish the moment she trusted it. The warmth from the cafe crept into her slowly, painfully thawing fingers that still felt numb. He noticed how she kept her eyes low, how she measured every movement, careful not to take up more space than allowed. A waiter approached, steps slowing as he took in the contrast between them. His gaze flicked to her worn coat, then back to the man's composed posture, his tailored suit. The hesitation was brief but loud. "Just the coffee?" the waiter asked, already angling his body toward him alone. Something tightened in his chest. He recognized that pause too, the silent question of worth. "2 coffees," he said immediately, voice calm but decisive. The waiter nodded, pen scratching quickly, relieved to follow certainty. He should have stopped there. He didn't. "And cake," he added, without looking at her, without asking permission. "Whatever's fresh." She turned toward him sharply, panic flaring. "You don't have to," the words rushed out, practiced, defensive. Pride trying to stand between her and kindness. "I know," he said softly, finally meeting her eyes. "But I want to." The waiter left, and the space between them filled with an unfamiliar quiet. She stared at the tablecloth, fingers brushing its clean edge like it might burn her. He felt the urge to explain himself, to justify the choice, but realized that would cheapen it. So he stayed silent. When the coffee arrived, the rich aroma spread between them, undeniable. The cake followed, warm, dusted with sugar, absurdly beautiful. She looked at it like it wasn't real, like it might disappear if she reached too fast. He watched her swallow, watched the battle play out in her eyes between hunger and fear. "Thank you," she whispered at last, not just for the food, but for the dignity in the way he'd given it. The words landed heavier than any praise he'd received all year. He nodded, unsure how to answer, knowing only that something small and fragile had just been placed in his care, and that for once. He didn't want to look away. She ate slowly at first, each bite careful, controlled, as if speed might expose need. The fork trembled slightly in her hand before she steadied it. He pretended not to notice, focusing instead on the way the cafe lights reflected off the table, on anything that would give her space to breathe. But he listened. Every small sound, the clink of metal, the quiet sigh when warmth finally reached her stomach, registered louder than the music playing overhead. When she began to speak, it was halting, like testing ice before stepping fully onto it, a job that vanished without warning. Rent notices folded and unfolded until the creases tore. A bus ride taken too far because going back felt pointless. Christmas coming faster than she was ready for, heavy with expectations she couldn't afford. She didn't ask for pity. She stated facts, stripped of drama, and that somehow made them hit harder. He felt each word land with uncomfortable precision. The boardrooms, the contracts, the numbers on screens that rose and fell, none of them had prepared him for this kind of honesty. He realized how rarely people spoke to him without wanting something, how this conversation cost her more than it ever would him. His chest tightened, a slow pressure he couldn't explain. She laughed once, short and brittle, when she mentioned family. "They're busy," she said, eyes fixed on the cake. The lie was thin, but he didn't challenge it. He understood the instinct to protect absence by naming it something else. Silence followed, thick but not empty. Around them, the cafe pulsed with life, oblivious. He felt oddly exposed, as if her story had stripped him of armor he didn't know he wore. For the first time that night, the emptiness inside him had a shape and a reason. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer solutions. He just stayed fully present, and somehow that felt like the most dangerous thing he could do. The comment came from 2 tables away, low but sharp, sharpened by drink and false confidence. A laugh followed it, thin and cruel, eyes sliding toward her coat, then to him, measuring the difference like a joke everyone was meant to understand. The sound cut through her mid-sentence. Her words died in her throat. Her shoulders tightened instantly, spine locking as if bracing for impact. He saw it, the way shame arrived before anger, the way she folded inward without being told to, her fingers stilled around the fork. She didn't look at the man. She stared at the table, jaw set, already rehearsing her exit. This part of the world she knew too well. Heat flared in his chest, sudden and unfamiliar. He'd heard worse in boardrooms, wrapped in polished language and smiles. But this was naked, unnecessary. He turned toward the voice, slow and deliberate, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. The man noticed then. So did the rest of the room. "She's my guest," he said, voice calm, carrying just far enough. No edge, no threat, just certainty. The words landed heavy. The man scoffed at first, then faltered under the weight of the attention now fixed on him. No one laughed this time. Someone shifted in their chair. The waiter paused mid-step. The moment hung tense and exposed, until the man muttered something into his glass and looked away. She exhaled, a shaky release she hadn't meant to make. Her eyes lifted to him, wide with something close to disbelief. Gratitude, yes, but also surprise, as if she hadn't expected to be defended so simply, so publicly. He met her gaze and held it, grounding, unflinching. "It's okay," he said quietly, though he wasn't sure who the words were for. The cafe resumed its rhythm, but the air between them had changed. Something had been drawn, an invisible line, and he had stepped across it without hesitation. She straightened a little, reclaiming space she'd been trained to surrender, and in that small shift he felt a strange, steady pride, not in power, but in choosing to use it for once without calculating the cost. Her smile came slowly, like light breaking through heavy clouds. It wasn't polished or practiced. It was uneven, cautious, real, the kind of smile that appeared only when someone felt safe enough to let it exist. It caught him off guard. He'd seen thousands of smiles in his life, networking smiles, winning smiles, smiles bought and sold in rooms that smelled like money. But this one felt different. It carried weight. "Thank you," she said, barely louder than the hum of the cafe. But the words pressed deep. Not for the coffee, not for the cake, for being seen, for not letting the moment swallow her whole. Her eyes shone under the chandelier lights, reflecting gold and shadow, and he felt something tighten in his throat that no deal had ever caused. He nodded, unsure how to answer without cheapening it. Around them, the cafe glowed warmer now, or maybe he was imagining it. The music softened. The clink of cups sounded less sharp. He noticed details he hadn't before, the faint scent of cinnamon, the way snow continued to fall. Beyond the glass, like the world was trying to hush itself, she relaxed into the chair, finally using its back, finally allowing herself the luxury of comfort. Her voice changed when she spoke again, steadier, less guarded. She talked about small things now, places she liked to walk when she needed to think, a book she'd once borrowed and never returned, how Christmas lights made the streets feel kinder, even when nothing else was. Each word stitched another quiet thread between them. He listened, truly listened, and felt the unfamiliar sensation of being exactly where he was meant to be. The emptiness that had followed him into the cafe had loosened its grip. In its place grew something tentative and warm, like hope he didn't trust yet but didn't want to dismiss. Time slipped without asking permission. The cafe began to thin, chairs turning, laughter fading into coats and scarves. Neither of them noticed at first. When the lights dimmed slightly, signaling closing, he felt a sharp, unexpected tension, an urge to hold the moment still, to not let the night end the way all the others had. The staff began stacking chairs, movements careful but unmistakable, and the soft music faded into something distant and final. The spell loosened. Cold pressed back against the windows, reminding them both of what waited outside. She glanced toward the door, instinctively calculating the night ahead. The long walk, the silence. He felt it too, the familiar closing. The return to emptiness, but this time it scared him. He reached for his phone out of habit, then stopped mid-motion. The screen stayed dark. For once, numbers and messages felt useless. He looked at her instead, really looked, and spoke before caution could interfere. "I don't want to be alone tonight." The words surprised even him, stripped of power, painfully honest. "If you don't either, we could walk. Just for a while." Her breath hitched. Fear flickered first. Uncertainty had taught her to be careful, but it didn't stay. Hope followed, fragile but bright, daring to exist. She searched his face for conditions, for hidden costs, and found none. Only the same quiet need she recognized in herself. She nodded once, slow and deliberate, like stepping forward without knowing if the ground would hold. They stood together, coats pulled on, the warmth of the cafe already slipping away. At the door he paused, holding it open, letting her pass first. The snow met them immediately, cold and alive, swirling under the streetlights. The city felt larger out here, harsher but also honest. They walked side by side, close enough to feel each other's presence, far enough to leave room for trust to grow. Behind them, the cafe lights dimmed and disappeared, another warm place closing its doors. Ahead, the street stretched on, glowing softly under Christmas lights, uncertain but open. And as their footsteps fell into the same rhythm, neither of them felt lost anymore.